Now, just to kind of recap, guys and gals out there, so effectively what we've done is we've set this thing up, we've downloaded our charts, we've put in an airplane. We will get into some of the more advanced functionality. As you guys can see there is a weight and balance section there, which is a different type of setup, and we'll show you how to load that weight and balance profile. But let's say that we are just excited to go and get flying here. So now what we're going to do is along the bottom there, you're going to notice in the black there's several menus: airports, maps, plates, documents. On the second to left button there where it says maps, I want everyone to click on maps, and that is going to take us back to our maps page, as you guys can see here. And what we'll do is we'll show you how to build a flight plan. So just like anything else, there's 10 different ways to skin the cat depending on what your preferences are. And then we can show you a couple of the codes that you can use to kind of simplify going from point A to point B, okay?
So the first thing that we're going to look at, obviously we know we're in the maps section. We see there, we clicked on that button there, and now we're in maps, right? So what's going to end up happening, we want to plan a flight up to Oceano. So today we're going to be leaving from Camarillo Airport up to Oceano. So if you guys want to follow along, if you're on Wi-Fi, I know it'll allow it, or if you're on some type of data, it'll allow it without, of course, having downloaded the maps. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click up here where it says FPL. We'll click on FPL. And noticing here, we have different performance profiles, just like he just said. So if we click on that first guy there, that upper left, then we'll see all of our airplane's potential, right? We're going to, of course, click on November 2078 Golf. That's the plane we're going to imaginary be flying today. And then, of course, with the Pro, we get different performance profiles that are available. When you have the basic subscription, you can add the basic performance profile. It'll be cruise speed, things like that, and it'll actually start giving you fuel and glide and all this stuff like that, okay? So we're going to just go ahead and go there. We're going to get there as fast as we can. So we'll keep it at 2450 RPM max manifold pressure, okay? What we can do is we'll start out, of course, by putting in, we'll get to these next, the 10,000 feet where it's at here in a second, but we'll start out by putting where we're gonna start out, right? So we've got, of course, we know we're starting from Camarillo, so we're gonna go KCMA, and then essentially all you're gonna do is click space, all right? As long as it's a legitimate spot, a legitimate point, then it will populate it on the map. It'll show us where it's at on the map, all right? If we know we're going to L52 or Lima 52, for example, what we're going to do is we're going to click in Lima and then 52. And again, this is the airport identifier. So we're just going to go put in Lima 52 and we'll click our space. And we notice there, if we put our keyboard down, zoom out a little bit, what we've got is now a flight plan, right? We've got a straight line of where we're going to go, right? We know that this isn't the best way to do it because obviously we see around here, we're flying around mountains and things like that. So we might not want to be going through there. So what we're going to do is, of course, we're going to put some more points, okay? So what we like to do, of course, is we'll fly to the VOR because we have to. We don't have a GPS, so we got to get to that first VOR at least. So what we like to do is we'll pull up this flight plan again. We'll kind of slide the screen over, and now we're seeing our San Marcos VOR here. So, of course, we know our RZS, and we're identifying it there with the RZS in that block there. We're identifying the VOR. So what we can do is, if we notice, if we were to just put in RZS and click on our space, then what ends up happening is this is thinking that we're going to fly up to Oceano and then basically back to RZS. Well, we don't want that. We want that to be our waypoint, right? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to grab, you're going to tap and hold on RZS. So you'll tap and hold RZS, and you can put it in between KCMA and L52, and now we notice it's a waypoint, okay? What we can also do is if, say, for example, we know RGS, and then we want to go ahead and select the Gaviota VOR, what we can do there is we can actually click on RZS, and we'll notice that we have an insert before or an insert after. We can go ahead and click on insert after, and we'll click in GVO for a Gaviota, and click on insert. We notice how that automatically inserted it and added it to our flight plan, right? So let's just go ahead and we'll click out of this real quick so you guys can see it a little bit longer, a little bit better. Oops. So we'll zoom out, and let's just say we're going to go up to the next VOR, all right? What we can actually end up doing is if we click and we grab on the map, right? So we know the line, right? We see the line. If we click on the map, obviously we're going to have to deselect our pointer, or what I'm using to draw. But if we click on our actual route of flight, we see how I'm able to. I'm just tapping it, I'm holding it, and I can bend it and I can place it anywhere I want to, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it, I'm going to move it, I'm going to place it over this Guadalupe VOR. Notice how I just got close, but if we click on all, we can obviously put that exact point, that waypoint, or that GPS point that I just clicked on, or if there's a GPS point there, or what we want to do is we want to go with that, go ahead and go with the Guadalupe VOR. So we see that VOR Camarillo, that third option under nearby. So we'll click on that, and we notice how it added that to our flight. But then we go ahead and open up FPL, and what are we noticing? That Guadalupe VOR is also on there as well, okay? So this is kind of one way to actually plan out the flight. But the next thing that we can do, of course, is we want to figure out how high we want to fly or the altitude that we want to be flying at. So what we're going to do is, of course, we can actually click on that elevation now. So if we click on elevation, we'll see some different winds and where the winds are coming from. And this is, of course, pulling altitude or pulling all of our information right off the internet or ADS-B if we're out in flight, okay, which we'll talk about in a second. But we notice that if we're to go up to 10, 12,000 feet, it's going to be more headwinds. So, I mean, we know that we can fly, we're flying VFR, sorry. So we know that we can fly at, say, it's 6,500 feet. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and click 6,500 feet. But what we'll notice is it's going to tell us our headwind. So we're going to be dealing with a 3-knot headwind estimated. It's going to tell us our estimated time en route of 45 minutes. And it's guesstimating that we're going to burn about 12.8 gallons of gas. All right, we see even though, maybe 8,500 feet might be something that we want to do because we're going to burn that a little bit less gas. It's up to you, and it's, at some point, there's been certain times that I see headwinds from 1,000 all the way up to 4,000, but if you get up to 6,000 now, you're dealing with the tailwind, and that'll help you out, okay? So just go ahead and click out of that. We're assuming that we're going to fly along at 6,500 feet for this flight. The next thing that we're going to see is it's telling us how long that flight is going to be total. And we know that if we see here, we've got our distance, our total distance, our total estimated time en route. Once we take off and we're flying along, if we have the GPS and things like that, it'll actually tell us our estimated time of arrival, how much fuel we're going to be using, and what knots, headwinds we're going to be dealing with or seeing. So these are all those different things that we might be dealing with, right? If, for example, there's a procedure, we can click on a procedure. So the basic one, we know Oceano is an uncontrolled airport. So I'm just kind of, what I'm doing now, sorry, is I clicked here on procedures. I'll slow down a little bit for you guys so we can keep up. But so I'm clicking on procedures, and when I click on procedures, it'll pull up this chart. All right, it's going to show us where we are at. It's showing us down in Camarillo, and then basically our flight. And the only thing that we're going to have is a traffic pattern to get into Lima 52. Okay. So if we click on that, the most common way to do this is actually if you read into it, and we'll talk about this later too, the most common way to get into it is on runway 29, and we actually see that runway 29 is giving us our best wind, right? So we can actually click on runway 29. And now, of course, what it's going to tell us is, do we want to do a straight in, which we know is not advisable at an uncontrolled field? Are we going to do a 45-degree entry? Are we going to want to cross midfield and then do a teardrop or direct? So it's telling us it's going to kind of do this, figuring it out for us and tell us what might be the best. So we'll go ahead and click on that 45 degrees. And essentially what this is going to tell us is that we're going to fly up and over the ocean a little bit, kind of loop back in, and then enter that downwind back into the traffic pattern for Lima 52. So let's go ahead and we'll add that to our route. All right, we'll close that. And now if we notice, we close out our flight plan, it's added it. It's added it to our flight plan, our actual little waypoints, right? We're seeing that now on our map. So what we got there is, of course, if it was the opposite side, you might cross midfield or something like that, direct or whatnot. All right, but that's our basics of actually plotting out the flight plan and how we want to go about our waypoints and things like that. Went into procedures. If we wanted to use a route, as in IFR flights, we can actually click in a route. And these are different routes that people have used before. So recommended or an ATC maybe cleared somebody via these different routes. So if you wanted to essentially via Santa Barbara, you can click on that and it'll show you that they went from Camarillo to Santa Barbara and then basically direct. You have a couple people that have gone direct, or of course via Airways, we see kind of something similar to what we're doing. Okay, so what we're going to do, of course, is we'll have our flight plan. We kind of came up with our own flight plan. If we want to, we can actually click on over here on estimated time of departure. And we'll say we're going to leave here at 1:45. Okay. So if we click on that guy, now it's going to save that. And now it's also going to tell us our estimated time of arrival, how much fuel we might burn because of the winds and things like that. Okay. After this, we'll go on to a nav log, or what this will show us. Our next option is, of course, a nav log. So this is where we're editing the flight plan. While we're actually flying the flight plan, what we like to do is click it onto our nav log as a traditional, we know we've done the paper nav logs and we could see that. So what we'll do is, we'll click ahead onto our nav log, and this will give us a traditional nav log, just like we're used to seeing. Okay. So we'll keep that up. We'll come back over here to Camarillo. And essentially what we're looking at here is just telling us Camarillo to the San Marcos VOR is going to be about a heading of 284. How far it is, so it's 38 nautical miles. We're going to burn 7.6 gallons of gas. It's going to take us 19 minutes to get there. All right. And then, of course, following on. Okay. Then from there, it shows us our next point, things like that. Okay. One other useful feature that's kind of neat when we're trying to, you can get the nav log full screen. We'll talk about that in a bit, but we're just going to continue on right here. So one useful feature, if you're dealing with mountains and terrain, thing like that, you can actually click on the profile. And what this is going to do is going to show you the terrain or any obstacles. And of course, we've got airspace here as well, that anywhere along our flight, it's going to show us all these different things, okay? So we know that our highest point is 4,391 feet, and it's going to show us that we're going to have, a clearance of at least 854 feet, all right? We're noticing here, we see basically these are the mountains along our flight, anything that we might be going over, and then where it's at on our flight. So we see our first waypoint right there under the 40 nautical miles. That's our first waypoint. Then our second waypoint, then it'll show us our descent, and then down to our third waypoint. And then, of course, all the little dots over towards the bottom right of that area are, of course, the entry to the traffic pattern, okay?